How you do, cousins? It's Rusty. Thanks for coming back again. Today's video is all about you. That's right. We are taking questions that you have asked on our comments section, and we're going through some good ones. We're going to answer those directly. We're hoping that this will help you out a little bit. We want to start doing this a little bit more. Stick around because some of these answers are going to surprise you a little bit. We're going to do some from Peaches, some from myself. I'm going to take the shared experience and hope that we can help you out a little bit. Let's get into it.
Okay, Rusty, here we go. Now, on the this video, how to examine and inspect costume jewelry. This is a three-parter on that question. On that video. The first one is from Teresa Slusher. She's part of that video. You're talking about one of the rhinestones. It's kind of black on the back, or it's black. And Teresa Slusher points out that if moisture gets into the foil at the back of a rhinestone, it'll tarnish, which in turn will make it black. So wanted to get your feedback on that. And then same video, Rosemary Simpson pointed out that the bumps are excessive solder. And so she's pointing out that on the back of the same piece of jewelry that you flipped over, talking about those black rhinestones, there's some bumps on the back. And in that video, you weren't quite sure what those bumps were. And she is suggesting that those are excessive solder. And same video, Wanda Arnold asks, is all Sarah Coventry jewelry costume jewelry?
Thanks, Peaches, for those first questions. I'd love to speak to that a bit. The first one had to do with the back of rhinestones, whether they're plastic or glass, and moisture getting in there and causing discoloration. That's absolutely true. That's a great point. The other thing is, sometimes those rhinestones will have a foil or some kind of color painted on the back of it, and they do that to cause light to reflect certain colors to make those stones look more vibrant than they actually are. Other times you might, they just get dust and crud, skin and things from your body. If it's a ring and stuff, just like anything will, over time there's a buildup of just dust and various things that can cause discoloration and cause them to look uglier. There is a way to clean that kind of stuff. Also, depending on the age, some of those old plastics, they just degrade over time. If you've ever worked with really old plastics and lucite's or different types of, I'm thinking of bangles and other plastic jewelry, Bakelite, stuff like that, can crack and degrade, kind of become foggy and not as bright. Sometimes you can just rub on that. Water is fine, hot water, rub on that stuff. Other times you're not going to be able to really fix that. On costume jewelry, it doesn't make sense necessarily to pull out all those stones. Usually those prongs are pretty not significant. They're pretty really thin, and so if you try messing with pulling those things out, you're likely to just break those, and then you won't be able to get them back in unless you glue them. So, but that's true. When you see stuff that's discolored like that, it may not be worth the price, just depending. As far as the solder and bumps on the back of stuff, that is true. Around edges where clearly metal has been fused together, if there's some excess there, that can be caused by excessive solder. But what I sometimes see on really cheap jewelry is like the inside of a ring, for example, not where anything has been soldered. Like usually rings, like a solid band, is not soldered. It was created to be in that band to begin with. On the inside, you'll see little bumps up underneath, and usually that's just where whatever the plating is didn't adhere real well, or there was dust or something in there, and it just corrodes underneath because there's oxygen between that plating and the alloy on the inside, and so you can get some of that. Sometimes it'll start to scrape off or slough off, and then you can tell that it's just a cheaper piece of jewelry. Sarah Coventry, to my knowledge, Sarah Coventry is straight up costume jewelry. It's not even really a higher brand. I would say it's kind of more to the lower end of of costume jewelry that would have a brand on it. I was just looking on eBay before I answered this question, and like the highest amount that anything Sarah Coventry has sold for in the last 90 days was like less than $100 for a single piece, and that was uncommon. You can sometimes get dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of pieces of costume jewelry in a lot of Sarah Coventry stuff for $100 to $200. So as far as I know, Sarah Coventry does not make anything with gold in it. It does not make anything with sterling silver, and it does not make anything with actual precious gemstones. So yeah, straight up costume jewelry. Feel free to correct me if someone knows of a piece, but I've never come across one that I would consider fine jewelry.
Okay, yeah, good information. Yeah, that Sarah Coventry, I don't think I've ever really seen any Sarah Coventry pieces that I would consider fine jewelry as well. So yeah, I'm with you, Rusty. I think that it's all costume jewelry. All right, so the next question in from top brands to know before you examine and evaluate jewelry. Wanda asks, how can we tell the difference between plastic and glass jewelry? The rhinestones, those fake those stones. How do you tell the difference between plastic and glass?
Thanks for that question. It's a common question I get in differentiating between things like precious and semi-precious gemstones, but then also things like glass and plastic rhinestones. How do you tell the difference? Well, there's a variety of ways. Some of these ways I've developed just because I've put my hands on thousands and thousands of pieces of jewelry, and you start to learn different characteristics. But in general, there's a hardness scale out there, the Mohs or the Moz scale, and it's a scale of 1 to 10. 1, and this is for like minerals and things, so 1 would be the softest, like talc, like white, powdery, super soft, all the way up to a diamond. A diamond is a 10 out of 10. It's the strongest material out there. A 9 would be corundum, and corundum is like sapphire and ruby. That's corundum. And then topaz is an 8. So 8, 9, and 10, those are the hardest ones. You got talc at the very bottom. And so that scale is typically, the way you test for things is what they call a scratch test. But before I get into that, I'll say that there are two things that help me determine whether or not something is glass or plastic from the beginning. One big difference between glass and plastic is that glass is quite a bit heavier than plastic. So if I have a piece in my hand and I have, let's say, another one for comparison, maybe one that you know has glass in it or you know has plastic in it, you can kind of compare if they're relatively the same size. I can usually tell without even a comparison nowadays, because I've held so many, what's heavier and what's not, and I can make a pretty good guess. If it's a piece of jewelry that is branded by a particular brand, that also helps me because certain brands use either exclusively plastics or only higher end things like glass or like lower quality, and by lower quality I mean lots of inclusions and maybe more cloudy semi-precious gemstones. So that will also help me. Anyhow, so those are the two things that if I'm out in the field and I don't have the ability to mess around with it, that's what will help me make the best guess. But as far as the scratch test is concerned, your fingernail is on the Mohs scale is considered a 2.5 hardness, generally speaking. So if you can scratch that rhinestone a little bit on the side with your fingernail, it's a 2.5, and that thing is most likely plastic. Okay, if you can scratch it with your fingernail, right? Kind of common sense. Now, if you move up to the next thing, they would recommend a penny. If you have a penny, because a penny is right around a 3. So only a half a Mohs stronger than your thumbnail. And so if you can scratch it with that, then generally speaking, it's probably also still plastic, because glass is usually in that 3.5 or stronger range, right? Again, it's heavier and it is stronger than plastics. The type of plastics they use in rhinestones are usually not real strong plastics. They are not, some of these poly based plastics that are really, really hard. They have a completely different scale for those. They shoot like a steel ball against it, and they've got their own scale. It's completely different. But those are the ways. The weight, the look of it. I mean, and like, is it? Can you tell that it's colored all the way through? Like the item itself is saturated entirely with color, or is it clear that they just kind of painted on the back of something? Because with those plastic rhinestones, they like to paint on the back of them or put a foil to reflect light, whereas they can make really beautiful glass items that they're not just colored on one side, like they're through and through the same color, if that makes sense. All right, Peaches, it's your turn. I'm going to throw one out here and a few more throughout this video to you. And this one is from a particular individual named Wanda. And this video was the 10 items that make you 10 times the profit. And what she's asking is, she says, do you sell more by auction or by buy it now? And how do you know when to do either? So she's talking about eBay. There's two different ways that you can sell. You can either do an auction for a certain amount of time, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 10 days. You can choose. Where, you know, people bid and then it ends at the end of that date. Or you can just set it up as this is what I want for this item. Buy it at this price, or send me an offer. That's another thing, offers. So Peaches, what do you do? What tends to work best for you, and how do you know when you have an item if you're going to sell it at auction or if you're going to buy it now? And what is your reasoning for why you choose it?
Yeah, I think for when I list stuff, I just feel more comfortable putting it as buy it now. I have listed some stuff as auctions, and I don't know. I mean, I guess I've gotten the price that I wanted as an auction, but I feel like when I listed it at buy it now, I'm putting it as kind of my listing price. I put it at the top dollar that I want to get for it. It's usually, I look at, sold comps, and then I inflate it just a little bit depending on the item, and then I will accept offers, and I'll kind of I'll set at the bare minimum of the least minimum amount that I would actually take on that. And I do that for almost every listing. And I think, though, to answer the question, I don't know if one way is better than the other. I think it just depends on your comfort level and what the item is, and just trial and error too. I think, Rusty, you do, when all your listings are all auctions, almost all of them are auctions, and you just feel more comfortable, and you've seen more success with auctions. So I think there's pros and cons to either. The buy it nows might sit there a little bit longer, but you could maybe possibly guarantee that price, whereas those auctions are going to be ending every 7 days or every 3 days or whatever you set it at, and so you might get more frequent sales, but are you going to get it at the price that you want? I don't know. So I think it's just really up to you. But that was a good question. I'm going to bump it back to you, Rusty, on this one. This is coming from What Real Work Looks Like as a Reseller. It's one of our newer videos. This is coming from Bess Bowers. And she asks, how do you inventory your eBay store? Do you use numbered bins to locate the item after the sale, or do you just have use good memory? And I'll throw my 2 cents in on this one, and I wish we had a better system. I group things. It's partly memory, almost all memory, but there is some organization to it. We'll put like items together, so all of our Christmas ornaments are in the same container, in the same box. All of the Legos are all together. The plush things are all together. The clothing is all together. And then if there's some similar items, like I have a lot of vintage pencils and colored pencils that I have bagged up, and the lots are similar. In the listing, I'll put some sort of code in it, like a SKU with a unique number in the listing, and then I'll mark the bag so that I can pair it up. But other than that, yeah, it's good memory. So, Rusty, I'm gonna let you chime in here and share your thoughts.
This is going to be one of those do as I say, do not do as I do sort of situations because in my head I know a better way to do inventory than what I do, but I just rely on my own memory a lot of times. So I do have a lot of plastic bins, as you can see on the shelf. In this section of the warehouse, we've got some of these clear plastic, and I prefer the clear plastic bins because it helps me, before I even jump into it, kind of know what's in there. But I have a pretty good memory of when I buy things at certain time periods in certain lots. Where they're going to be in general. And so I often just rely on my memory, which is not great because if something happened to me and I needed someone else to come in here and find this thing, they would be having trouble. And so I don't recommend that. Some of the best stuff I have seen from other people, which at some point I may employ, is to basically categorize, give a number, like a letter or a combination of a letter and number system to certain tubs, and just know like you're gonna divide and conquer. You're gonna sort out your jewelry from your matchbooks, from your postcards, from whatever else, and you'll have sections like, okay, a postcard sold. That means I need to come over here to this drawer because this is where my postcards are, and I do have some postcards in here, right? So go there, and then you can do it. Like, if oftentimes when I do postcards, I'll do like 100 at a time. So I'll have 100 in a section, and this will be section A1. And so when I do my listing on eBay, I'll do my title, and at the very end of the title, I'll put A1 in there. And that is an indication to me when it sells of where I need to go and locate it. So that's very common to have that either in the title or in the description, so that when it's sold, you go search that information, and that number, code, or however you have it, word or whatever, corresponds with the specific tub or location that you have something stored in.
All right, Rusty, got another question here for you. This is coming off of the video titled "Not Sure If I Can Bring Myself to Sell This." In this video, you found this beautiful ring, large gold-plated ring, and you talked about in a particular segment that some people might want to buy that ring to get that gold, even though it's gold plated, to extract that gold from that gold, the plating, or extract the plating from that ring. And Wendy Whiteman responded, and she says, "You cannot melt down plated jewelry. The plating is about 0.1 to 2.5 microns of gold. It will wear off quickly through wear and cleaning. Do not tell people that they can get the gold off gold-plated jewelry. It is what it is, fake." And that was, so sounds like she might be calling us out a little bit, Rusty, but I wanted to hear what your thoughts on that.
What an interesting question, and you've just called me out on my talking about gold and what you can do with it. And so here's what I would say. I'm not going to say that viewer is wrong, because a lot of what they said is absolutely true, but they're also not entirely correct. So let me go into a smidge more detail on the differences between solid gold, gold filling, and gold plating. So solid gold is exactly what it sounds like. Through and through, from the outermost edge of whatever this piece of jewelry is, all the way to the core, the center, and all the way out again, it's the same purity of metal. So 10, 12, 14, 18, 22 carat, 9 carat, depending on where it was made and how old it is. That is the purity amount of the gold. Okay, it's solid gold. That's not in question. Now we're talking about gold filled and gold plating. Gold filled jewelry is jewelry that has some sort of a non-precious metal base, and it has one or multiple layers of solid gold pressed onto the outside of it. So the caratage of that also can vary, 10, 12, 14, 18 carat, but it is actual solid gold layers. Now, gold plating is where they have taken a process called electroplating, and they run a current through it, and it causes, this layer of metal on the outside that does have tiny, small, like the viewer mentioned, 1 or 2 or 3 microns, which is a very small amount of gold on the outside. That stuff can wear off really easily, but can it be harvested? And the answer actually is yes, it can be harvested. Is it something that's worth it to the average person? No. Does the average person have the know-how and the chemical solutions and, all of the gear that you would need in order to do that? No. You need a well-ventilated area. You need a variety of different acids. You need beakers, and you need time, and you need a very large amount of jewelry that has this plating on it in order for it to make any sort of financial sense. So when I was making that comment, I should have specified this. I was really more talking about gold-filled jewelry, because that does have a solid layer of gold. The process for removing that can be the same because you're using these chemical solutions, but you get a lot more gold for your effort if you're using gold-filled jewelry versus gold-plated jewelry. Not a lot of people buy gold-plated jewelry to harvest the gold, but it does happen. They don't just use jewelry either. There's a lot of old ceramics that people would have painted or put different gold foils and things on that also you can harvest that from. If you want to check that out, just look up harvesting gold from gold-plated jewelry or gold-filled jewelry on YouTube. There are videos that will show you tutorials on how to do this process. But in general, what I'm doing and what the average person is doing is not buy and scrap gold-plated jewelry to make a fortune, because you'd really have to have a huge amount in order for that to make financial sense. This is more to tell you that items that have things like GF, gold-filled, on them, and the carat, or EP, or electroplated or plated jewelry, these are not solid gold. That was kind of the point. These are not solid gold jewelry. This is jewelry with a thin layer of gold on the outside of it. It does still have value. It is not fake. It is not worthless. People will pay more for jewelry that has gold, even at the tiniest fractions. Will pay more for that on average than they'll pay for stuff that doesn't have gold on it. It's kind of common sense. But yes, that's not something people do a whole lot of, is harvesting electroplated jewelry. Now, stuff gold-filled happens all the time. People just look up scrap gold lot on eBay, and you're going to find tons and tons of listings of several ounces and or pounds of jewelry that they're selling. And you know who's buying that? Not you and me. It's the scrappers. They're buying it to harvest the gold. It's a whole industry. It's been going on for a long time.
All right, now this is not so much a question, but just we get a lot of, well, it's not one particular question, but we do get a lot of comments from our viewers, especially on those jewelry videos. They ask us if we evaluate jewelry, if we can cut or polish jewelry. They ask if they can send us pictures of their stuff. And so I just wanted to share that we don't service jewelry, we don't cut, we don't clean, we don't polish it, we don't clean it up. But if you do have questions or need any assistance evaluating the worth of your jewelry, how to identify it, you can certainly reach out to us via email. We'll post the email either in the video or down in the description, and we can provide some assistance there. So, but yeah, Rusty, what are your thoughts there? But we certainly do appreciate the questions. We'll try to respond in the comments, but you can definitely reach out to us for some help. We'll let you know if we can help you out or not.
Well, folks, in general, we're happy to help if we can. We've got a lot of work and a lot of stuff we're doing on our own, but if you have questions, that's the whole purpose of this channel, is to try to educate you and for us also to learn from you. And so, like Peaches said, we got that email listed there on the YouTube channel. You can email us, send pictures, ask questions. We will do our best to get back in touch with you. If it turns out that you're in need of something more significant, you have a large hoard of stuff that you need to sell, or you have a bunch of things and you need a little bit extra help, we could probably work something out with you to help you, but there may be a fee involved, simply because the time we're taking to work with you, we're taking time away from our business, and that means a potential lost revenue. So if we want to swap that out and help you, we're happy to do that, but we might need to talk about a little bit of a fee if that's something you'd be willing to do. So we're not against it, but we don't have a structure set up out there for right now, because we don't do that for a living, helping other people. We primarily buy and sell our own things within our own business. All right, we have another couple of questions by someone named PK Bailey that's just come in recently. Two questions that are very different, but I think are worth answering. Number one, do you have business cards? So, Peaches, do you have business cards? Do you hand them out? Do you not? What's the utility of doing that? Is it worth the price? What advice could you give? I imagine it depends on whether you're doing stuff by yourself or if you're doing stuff for other people. But and then, do you ever change if you're buying and selling watches? Do you ever change the batteries, like buy new batteries to put in a watch before you sell it, or do you just sell it as is? I'll answer for myself. I personally do not buy watch batteries usually because the price that I'm able to sell a watch for that's working with a battery versus one that's not, there's not enough of a difference in what I'm earning by selling it with a battery than without to justify the time it takes me to find the right battery, go out and get it. Also, you run the risk if you buy a battery and go out and buy a battery, you put it in the watch and it still doesn't work. Well, you just spent money on a battery that now you're not going to make any more money on that watch. So that's just for me. I'm curious your thoughts. In most cases, I try to, unless I'm buying a large lot, if I'm buying individual watches, I'm only buying ones that have really good brands or automatics. That means you can wind them and they don't take a battery. Those tend to bring more values for me. Anyways, but tell me about that. Business cards, is it worth it? And what do you do with watches?
Interesting. I never thought about carrying business cards. I don't have any business cards, but I could see that as my business grows, as we expand, Rusty, and we're getting into if we ever dip into going to estate sales and offering buyouts or any other service besides just patronizing the estate sale and buying a few things here and there. But if we want to get into some bigger deals, kind of like when you got bought that small antique store, essentially, it might be good to have some business cards. But again, I don't know if it's really worth it at this point. So no, I don't have any business cards. Now, to answer your second question about the watches, we do. I don't deal with a whole lot of watches. I have bought watches and sold watches. I have replaced batteries in the watches if it was just to confirm that it worked. I've only done that once. One thing I will add to your comment, to your response, Rusty, is that in addition to like some watches, to replace the battery, it requires some extra steps. It's more than just popping the back off and plopping in a new battery. Some of those, the higher end watches, require special tools and know-how into replacing those batteries. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could mess up the watch. So, and there are some watches I don't have the proper tools to replace those batteries, so I don't even bother with it. So hopefully that answers your question.
We have one of our viewers has asked us if we ever use other people to list for us. Do we just list by ourselves, or do we employ people? So, Peaches, what about you? Do you ever employ somebody, or what are your thoughts on that as a process, or maybe as a potential way of scaling up your business, employing other people to do different parts of your business for you, like listing or photographing items, that sort of thing?
You mean, do I ever hire somebody to do the job that you hired me to do? Nope. No. In all seriousness, no, I don't. I have not hired anybody to help us in this job. Not outside the family, but I think that it could be beneficial if there's you're bringing in a lot of the same similar items, or you bought a huge lot of, say, postcards or matchbooks, or something where there's a lot of similarities, and like you can almost build you could write out a process and procedure for listing these things, and there's not a whole lot of variation from item to item, so that you could train that person on what it is that you're needing them to do. I think that it would get tricky when it comes to like when there's a lot of variation and some unique things about it, like training them on what to put in that listing and how you're pretty much just doing it for them. If you're having to write out that description, make sure you put this in that description and select these things for this item and make sure you put that in the title. You're pretty much doing the listing for them. So that's why I think that it could be helpful if you've just got thousands of one item, or not just one item, but like, a type of item. It might be helpful to pay somebody to help you to get those into your store. Okay, Rusty, well, I've got another one here for you. This is back when you got the huge lot of matchbooks. This is coming from the video, "This one matchbook might pay for the entire lot." This is coming from Ruman, Still You Now. And he says, "Yo, bro, where do you find so many matchbooks?" Rusty, can you share with us the story about how you got thousands of matchbooks?
Well, Ruben, if that's the way you actually sound in real life, I would like to meet you, sir, because you have got to be a hoot. I'm not quite sure if Peach's rendition is all that accurate, but we're going to go with it anyways. Where do I find all these matchbooks? Well, it was an awesome story, and I'll summarize it for you real quick. I was out in my local community. I live in western North Carolina, near the Asheville area, and I was just frequenting one of these antique stores that on somewhat of a rotation, I'll check out and see what's going on there. I came across this like kind of metal bin, so to speak, of these vintage matchbooks, and it had a little sign on it that said $2 a piece. So it was kind of like set up for you to kind of sort through and fiddle around and pick ones you'd want, and then it's $2. So I thought, wow, there's a lot here, and I don't know a ton about matchbooks yet, so I fished through. I found a couple that I thought might be interesting. Took them back. I bought them. Spent $4. Went home, and then out to the warehouse the next day, and I listed those things, and within 24 hours, I sold both of them for a combined like $60. I spent $4, and I thought, there's some money in this, So I went back the next day and I said, would this person be willing to sell all of these? What would the price be if I bought all of them? And she's like, well, I don't know. Let me talk to her. And so she gets the person on the phone. The person gets me on the phone and says, oh, I got more than that. Do you want more? And I was like, well, I guess. She's like, I've got boxes and boxes of them. She's like, I bought them at like an estate sale, essentially, and they're just clogging up, just taking up all this room. I don't know what to do with them. And so I went back and looked, and I saw several boxes. And she was like, yeah, I paid, what'd she say? I paid $350 or $400, something like that, for all of them. And I said, well, ma'am, what if I pay you $500 so you make some money on it and I solve this problem for you? And she was like, yes, please. Now, that particular day, I had a Toyota Corolla, a 2007 Toyota Corolla. That car was so great. But anyhow, I didn't think I was going to be able to fit them all in that car. In the trunk, inside, I had, we've got videos. If you haven't seen, go and check them out. I mean, at that time, that was the first of, I want to say, 4 total purchases from this person. She kept finding them. I left my phone number. She would call and say, I found more. Do you want more? I ended up spending somewhere around $1,100 total. And I got somewhere in the range of 40 to 50,000 matchbooks, all mostly from like the 1930s through the 1950s. And over the course of the last year, I think in the first 14 months is how long, and I actually still have just a few handful of them left, but I did somewhere in the range of $12,000 to $14,000 in sales off of those, off of that $1,100 expense. And so pretty good. I mean, it was a lot of work. It's tedious. Photographing the top, the front, the back, the inside. And imagine doing that for thousands and thousands of those, and not just photographing them, but making the listings and putting them out. But we had some doozies. I've had multiple ones in that lot that sold for over $100 a piece. And so it was a great lot. It was just an antique store. I didn't know until I walked in, and poof, it was there. It hadn't been there before. So I would just say, like, the lesson learned here is that if you go in a place and it doesn't have what you want, don't just discount that place forever. Wait a month or two. go back over, because some of these places have really quick turnover, other places don't. But sometimes you might find a gigantic score like that, and you'll only know if you're going back from time to time.
Okay, Rusty, you got this next question, or actually, it's not a question. This is just a response to. We get a lot of people in this particular video calling us out. This is from an old video. It's a postcard video. 5 features that make antique postcards valuable: the content, artwork, the message, stamp, and the cancellation. Okay, that's the title. Now, there's this in one section in that video. You're flipping through a stack of postcards, and there's one. It turns out it's kind of a gag, funny photo from a place called Knott's Place, and it's in Buena Park, California. And in that video, you thought that may have been a place no longer existed. Thought it may have been a ghost town. At this point, you thought it could have been an old photo from, say, the 1800s or something. Turns out it was just a fake, staged photo. And about once a month, we get a comment on that video saying that Knott's Place is not a ghost town. It's actually a theme park out in California, and it's actually called Knott's Farm. So just want to let everybody know, the viewers know, we know our error, okay, and we know the truth now that it's Knott's Farm, and it's a theme park out in Buena Park, California. And so anyway, it's very funny. In fact, we just got a comment on that just the other day. So I would say that in the mid 40s, it changed its name from Knott's Place to Knott's Farm. So anywho, that's just wanted to clear the air on that. Okay, and we understand. Thank you everybody for setting us straight.
All right, Peaches, here we have a question on one of our postcard videos, and it's a very basic question. Where is the best place to sell postcards? What would you say, Peaches?
Well, me personally, where I like to sell postcards, I stick with eBay. That's where we put all of our store is all on eBay. We don't do the cross-site listings. It's all eBay. I had the most experience and comfort level with eBay. So yeah, that's where. And why? Now, to go back to an earlier question about do I do auction or buy it now? So some of those postcards and like old vintage antique pictures, some of them I will put as an auction. But for the most part, I do buy it now on eBay.
This isn't actually a question, Peaches. I'm just going to surprise you on this. This comes from a longtime viewer, the Golden Crown Merchandise Company, and they said, your videos have provided us so much education. Our business is better because of you. Thanks to you and your gang down there at the warehouse. Send our love to Peaches. So, son, that one's right out there to you. Good stuff. That was on our step-by-step jewelry examination guide, which has been a real good video for us. Okay, you're up.
Thanks for sharing that comment, Rusty, with everybody. I remember reading that a while back. It warmed my heart then. Hearing you read that now, it warms my heart again, and even more so. So that's great to hear. And thank you, Golden Crown Merchandise, for sticking with us and following us since the very beginning. We're growing there right with you. So Rusty, got a question. This is from on the video, What Real Work Looks Like as a Reseller. This is from PK Bailey. And PK says, hey, Rusty, how do you research vintage buttons? Thank you for your channel. And so he's, PK, I shouldn't say he, just PK, is referencing a portion of that section of that video when you're going, this is when you bought out basically that small antique store, just boxes and boxes of stuff where you had to get a U-Haul truck to get, and take 2 loads, right, to get it back to the warehouse. And you were sorting through all the stuff, and you came across a small bin of buttons, full of buttons. So, Rusty, how are we going to research vintage buttons and know how to price them?
Buttons. Good question. How do you research those, Rusty? Well, I research them much in the same way that I research everything, which is I'll just simply go into a place like eBay, a platform where I'm trying to figure out what the comp prices, sold prices are for something that I might have, and I'll search for them. Now, there's a variety of different types of buttons, and that's probably at the heart of your question. Like, if I have all these different ones, how do I know where to even begin? Well, one way of starting off is just to look up, like you can look in Google, valuable buttons or most valuable buttons, and you're going to very quickly see lists and photos to go along with those of the type of things that seem to be more valuable. You're going to see that there are different categories. There's military buttons. There's specifically buttons that are made of metal. There are Bakelite and some of these colored plastic buttons. There are buttons that are made out of other materials, earlier materials like porcelain, like bone, like mother of pearl. And so you're going to start to learn the differences between these just by spending 15-20 minutes looking online. You're going to notice that, okay, some of these earlier ones have just 2 holes in them, whereas some of the later ones have 4 holes, and you'll start to notice that there are themes between ones that have particular values. So what I do is I will, try to examine something and say, okay, well, this button is roughly this size, it's this color, it's carved in this way, and I'll try to search things based on what I'm seeing. Also, I'll use Google Lens, which on my cell phone here is just a little, button at the top of Google. It looks like a little camera icon, and I'll take a picture of that puppy, and I'll search online, and then whatever pops up, if it looks like the thing I have, I'm going to go to that site and read about that and kind of learn. So you got to spend some time. You got to investigate it a little bit. Now, I will say that buttons that are made out of Bakelite, some of these other ones I talked about, early military ones from, say, it could be from any war, World War II, World War I, Civil War. If you have buttons that are, there's this type of China button, a Chinese maybe make or manufactured button that I've seen have been selling for a lot of money recently. And then also ones that are made out of kind of interesting materials like bone or like mother of pearl, things like that are made from natural materials as opposed to ones that were man-made like plastics can go really well.
Who knew buttons could be something to look for, right? And something to sell. It could have value. But so have a question here, another question here for you, Rusty. Okay, this is coming from the video, What We Are Buying and Reselling Online in 2022. And this is coming from Gib and Joe's Travels. Now, it says, maybe try buying labels from the office supply store. Then you won't have to cut them and you can just peel and stick. They make stickers about that size, just a suggestion. So let me just give some context here. In this particular video, in that section of the video, Rusty's actually preparing some inventory to sell at a consignment sale outside of eBay, and he had to follow that consignment sales procedures, their guidelines for how to label things. And so he had to actually list his items in their database and printed out these sheets of tags that he had to cut out and either tape or onto the item, or you can pin them onto the item. And so that's what he was showing. But I will say that in eBay, you're absolutely right. When we sell stuff on eBay, we calculate the postage. We've got our printers synced up and hooked up to our computers, and so when we use Rollo thermal printers. So when it's time to print that postage, it just burns it right onto that sticky label, and we slap it onto the package, and it's good to go. So just going back to Gib and Joe's Travels, if we could answer your question, you are right. It would be more efficient to use some sort of peel and stick type of label, and we do that. But in that, what you were looking at was what, as I described, it was something outside of eBay.
That's a great piece of information, folks. Thanks for sharing that. That is one way to do it. For the longest time, old Rusty just printed off of a regular inkjet printer and cut out just pieces of paper and did it. That costs a lot of money with ink over time. It's a lot of extra work with cutting. I eventually moved over, as Peaches mentioned, to the Rollo printer, and you buy the printer and then you periodically buy these labels, and it doesn't involve ink at all. It's like a heated element, and it just kind of puts that, I don't know what the process is, but essentially it doesn't use any ink, which is nice. And it comes, when you buy the labels, there are 500 at a time. So when I get near the end, I just order another 500. It's like $20. And I've had this thing for 1.5 to 2 years now, and it's still going strong. No problems at all. But as Peaches mentioned, sometimes when you're doing certain types of work or events, they may have their own criteria for how you do your labels that may not fit with the way you naturally do them. And so if you want to participate in that, then you got to follow their rules and do it their way. And that's kind of what he was talking about.
Okay. Well, that's going to be all the questions I have for us for today, Rusty. I think this went pretty well. This is fun. We should do it again. And I hope you all enjoyed it as well. Please keep sending us comments and questions so we do certainly appreciate the feedback. And we love engaging with you all. So keep it coming, and we'll do this again.
Thanks, cousins, for sticking around for this episode. We hope that we answered some of your questions. If you ever have anything more in-depth you want to go into with us, please email us at the address listed on our YouTube channel. We'll be back soon. Rusty Harris.